Hey, I am April, and I want to talk to you today about autism. I know you've seen a lot of people talk about autism on YouTube, and you know, you've probably heard many of the same things before, and in this video, you might again as well, possibly. But maybe you can learn a few different things as well. Um, I'd like to talk about that. I want to be able to raise awareness, let people know what autism is really like in more depth, if possible. It is very important that people who have autism can have people who aren't autistic better understand us. It is vital that neurotypical people understand us, autistic people, because communication can be difficult between neurotypical people and autistic people if neurotypical people or even autistic people lose patience when communication problems happen. Patience is key. Please have patience with us. That's the most important thing. You can try to work through communication issues if you take the time and are more literal and are more specific when communicating with us. We need specifics. You can't just say, well, do this and not explain it well enough because we won't understand it. I mean, you could, but we then wouldn't possibly understand it unless we already become familiar with what you mean at that point, so that if you then do say something like that, we will by then know what you mean. But until we get used to you and what you mean, it's not going to make sense to us because we are so literal. We need specificity. Sometimes some people who are autistic may even need like a lot of details. I know I do. And when you are communicating with me and you would like for me to do something, ask directly. And if I can, I will. It doesn't have to be a long explanation, but it does have to be specific. I can't just be guessing what one means for me to do. Please be specific. Please be direct. And say what you mean, so we don't have to guess what you mean. That would help. Be patient with us, and it could help if you could talk to us sometimes on our topics we may like as well. So that in a conversation, it's not all our effort to try to communicate with you and work hard to not always talk about our topics or to not talk about our topics or any topics for too long of time. We need neurotypical people to also work with us. Just have patience while we try to communicate better. And forgive us if we do lapse into our topics again that are our favorites. It is just a neurological difference of who we are. Most of us can be enjoyable, amiable, which means friendly, highly intelligent. Some autistic people aren't. Some autistic people are of average intelligence. But a lot of us have higher intelligence. We are above average in intelligence, are better at discerning patterns, analyzing. So we're really good on the job. That tends to help, when we have jobs where we can use our analytical skills to help with whatever project on which we are working. It is a misnomer that we autistic people can't always understand jokes. We can. We just don't always understand when someone's making a joke or that something may be a joke. depending on if we already know the person or not and what they mean as joke, if we already learned them at that point and they've explained, oh, well, this is normally a joke and how I joke. Oh, okay. So that later on when they joke, we know they're joking. If we haven't been used to that person yet, we may not know that they're joking. And so it's like, huh? Sometimes, though, even when we do know a person, if they make a newer type of joke, not just a new joke, it's like, huh? It throws us. And so it's like, wait a minute, was he joking? Was he not? But it's just even harder if we don't know you yet to discern that you're joking at all. Sometimes I'm like that. And it's like, oh. Some of my friends were like, oh, but April, we were just joking. I'm like, oh, sorry. So saying I have egg on my face. Yeah, it's like that. That type of moment. Some of us, though, we can come up with jokes of our own, though. Like, forgive me, yawning. Anyway, some of us can come up with jokes like one that I came up with, scientific jokes, for example. That can be funny, sometimes even to neurotypical people, though. That proves that we do understand what jokes are. I had one, for example. Mine was, what do you call a 3D printed human being if one existed? A carbon copy. Because we human beings are 17% carbon. So, a carbon copy. Anyway. It is also a misnomer that autistic people tend to not feel or are narcissistic, but we are not narcissistic unless we've been through severe abuse and end up that way, end up deciding to be that way. But that is the decision one can make, whether to be that way or not. If one realizes it's wrong, one can choose to not be that way. A lot of the time, though, people who are autistic notice the differences and don't end up turning out that way because we realize it's wrong and therefore we don't go that way of being that way. We tend to be more truthful, I guess you can say. We do care about people. We do love people. We do have empathy after all. We just don't always know when to show it. Strong empathy at that. When my grandfather died, I cried like the hardest I've ever cried for anyone for like a month. And, wow, the depression was strong and for a long time. I remember that. It was just so sad, He was a really sweet person, and, that was just sad. And I know most people talking about a loved one would cry when talking about them. Sometimes we autistic people don't. Me talking about my grandfather, I should be welling up now, crying now about it. But because of my autism, I can't always cry when one normally might. It is not that I don't have emotions, it's just I can't always show them at appropriate times. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. And it's not my fault. But that's just one example for you. You actually see it as I'm talking, about it. It's like, well, technically you would see it after I've already recorded this video, but you know what I mean? You're seeing this video of me talking about it, and I've not cried as I, said anything about my grandfather dying, about his passing. Because of my autism, it's just not always possible for me to, as I'm speaking about something like that. It's rare if I ever do as I'm speaking about something like that. What you may not know is that the police don't always know that a person is telling the truth if they don't cry during a situation like someone breaking into a house, or, forgive me for this, someone being raped, or something really severe and bad like that. When I was raped, I remember talking to the police and they didn't believe me because I wasn't crying. When it happened again by someone else, because of my language that I use and because I was not crying, the detective actually mocked me and said, "Oh, that's very good language, that you're using and for you," as though being autistic meant I was cognitively impaired, not socially impaired. And he said, "Well, I want to believe you, but you're just not crying. I don't understand it." He didn't understand that with autism, one can't always cry. Or in my case, even if I could, I chose not to allow myself to cry, because when you cry, sometimes, it messes with your vocal ability to say what you mean, to get any words out to say what you mean. And so I wanted to be able to have the vocal ability to tell him all I needed to tell him of the information of what happened, because I had remembered almost everything that happened in great detail, and I wanted to get those out while I could, in the proper order, verbatim. And if I'm allowing myself to cry and be emotional, I then can't get that out. I was being logical when just telling him my information. Because of my autism, I didn't realize at the time that that could be a problem, ironically, of giving all the information and that I could remember, in doing so as straightforward as I could without crying, to do so as fast as I could for him. And it was like, now I know. But that happens more often than people realize. People who are autistic tend not to be believed if we're not showing emotions during something like that, or if we're not crying at a funeral right away or at all, but we're crying later on or what have you. People don't realize that that's just autism. It's just a neurological difference. At first, I didn't cry at the funeral until after the casket closed. I was being there for everyone else, not because I knew I had to, but because it was just my innate... Oh, I don't know how to describe it. I'm better at writing things down. Forgive me. I want to say it was just part of who I am, to just be there for others in their time of need. I didn't even consider my own needs during that. So I didn't feel a need to cry during that time until after the casket closed. Then it felt real. Like, oh, she's really gone. And then I could cry. But I only cried a couple times in my life over her. And again, that's the autism. I can't always control that of how often I grieve. But I've started to learn how to control how long I grieve, and try to allow myself some time to do that when I start to grieve, and then taper it off if I can, a little bit. So I'm not, I guess my wording would be, I'm not stewing in my grief, if you will. Because that's not healthy, to just allow yourself to stew in your grief and never get out of that. I know, because I was like that for years, and it even affected my schooling. I'd ask the teacher in one of my college classes, my history class, I was grieving two people at the same time, and I asked him if I could take a few days to grieve, because it was not a father, nor a husband, nor a wife. I could not. If it's just a partner, but it's not a partner who I've married, he said no. If it's not a parent, then no. Or a sibling, someone of immediate family, or a child, etc., then no, I could not. So I had to try to go through my history class like that, and grieving, and I found that what helped me, ironically, was to keep busy, because I had to finish that. I couldn't drop the class, and it's harder to drop too many classes when I have financial aid. So I continued through the class. I had to compartmentalize to do so. I was able to do that. Sometimes people with autism can do that, and we found that when going through difficult times, functioning is better if one does activities. Usually be the opposite. One can't do activities if they're grieving. For me, it's been the opposite. I can do it that way, with the exception of when grieving one of my exes, who was so dear to me that I would have married him. That didn't always work to help me get through it. That of keeping busy didn't always. Sometimes it did. It didn't always. Sometimes I just had to allow myself to feel it, cry, get it out of my system for a little bit, and then focus on activities to get through the rest of that, so I don't continue to grieve. And that helped me. So, I mean, it can be different for any autistic person, but a lot of autistic people, it's like that, where keeping busy can help one through something that's difficult. In times when that won't work, we can tend to do what is called shutdown mode, where it's similar to if you have a migraine. You have no lights, no sound, and you just mentally shut down. But with autism, whether one has a migraine or not, it's the same process. Lights off, no sound, and just having the quietness. Sometimes wrapping up in a blanket, a heavy weighted blanket. I have one of those for myself. Can sometimes help, because it feels like a hug in a way. It's very comforting, but one doesn't have to worry about being touched. I don't have a problem with someone comforting me, but a lot of autistic people do, of other autistic people. Not all autistic people do, though. But, I mean, for times when you can't have someone hugging you, being under a heavy weighted blanket can be nice. Sometimes just listening to music, like the same song over and over and over for a day or two, or 3 even, if time permitting. I've done that. I've fallen asleep listening to music and woken up to the music still playing on repeat, and go about my day like that, because I could not function otherwise when going through severe grief. Like I said, different things for different people. And, whether autistic or not, music tends to help. But if you're autistic, it can really help even more so, as well as having pets, a cat, a dog, or many cats, many dogs. Autistic people tend to also find joy in repetitiveness, but what most people don't know is that we can also tend to have a condition called misophonia, which is the hate and inability to have patience for repetitive sounds made by other people, such as pencils tapping. A lot of neurotypical people, when they're nervous about something or they're lost in thought, they tend to tap their pencil on a table, desk, or hard surface of some kind. And it is just intolerable. Like, it literally can cause a meltdown. And people don't understand that. It's ironic, really, because I can do my stimming process to comfort myself, self-regulation, that is tapping my fingers to my other fingers, or tapping my toe to my toe, or rocking back and forth in a pattern. That tends to help me. But ironic that it's a pattern when tapping by other people, whether it's on a surface or not, if I see it or even hear it if it's loud enough, it's just aggravating. It's aggravating and it's intolerable, and that's a downside of autism that a lot of people may not know. But what you may not know is that we also want to be cared about. We also want to be included. Even if you don't know how yet to include us, at least try. And you can actually tell us that too when you do meet us. You can say, hey, I'd like to include you in this activity that we're doing, and then tell us what the activity is. But also tell us, hey, I just want to let you know, though, that we don't know how best you would like to do this activity and how best to communicate with you. Can you let us know that so that we can communicate well? Cool. That'd be awesome. I know I'd appreciate that. Someone actually showing an interest in wanting to communicate better with me or to communicate well with me. That's awesome. If they're a stranger and they want to include me, and they just tell me you want to communicate well with me, and let me know that you don't know how to do so but you would like to, and then I can let you know what can work best for me, and I will also then try to work with you as well on what you might need. I'll let you know how best I can try to work with you as well in communicating. I mean, that'd be nice. That'd be very, very cool. That's all for now. I will do another video next week. I appreciate you watching this. Have a good day.